Hello everyone. In this Sudoku Primer video we're going to solve an easy puzzle, but um, if you're more advanced, if you're past easy puzzles, stick around because we're going to talk about a little bit uh, more difficult techniques than what you would need to solve an easy puzzle. I'm going to talk about things that we do unconsciously when we solve a puzzle that you might not think about. This is puzzle number 10 from Sudoku To Go, volume 106 by Soap Opera Digest. And I will start out just talking about a couple of things that we can do that we might be doing unconsciously anyway, and this will maybe help you understand the thought process that goes through finding numbers and solving numbers. Okay, let's look at column 7 here. When we solve puzzles, we usually look for techniques to help figure out how to find numbers, of course, but we usually look in what I call containers. We look in rows, columns, rows, and boxes. And one thing that we can do, like in this column right here, and you probably do this already, but I'm just going to talk through the thought process that you go through. We know there are 4 missing numbers here. Let's see what those are. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4, 6, 7, and 8. Now there are 2 ways to find these missing numbers. One is find the 4 numbers that are missing, like I just did, 4, 6, 7, and 8, and then look in each individual cell and see if any of these cells can see 3 of those 4 numbers. Okay, that's the first technique. The second technique is look at these 4 numbers, or 4 cells, and see if you can find a place, or see if you can find 3 of the 4 cells that can see the same number. Now we're looking for 4, 6, 7, and 8, right? So, and you'll notice on this one, we've got an 8 here, so this can see an 8, so that can't be an 8. This one sees an 8, so that can't be an 8. And this sees an 8, so that can't be an 8. So that's the second technique, and we know this is an 8 right here. Okay, that's the second technique I talked about. The first technique is looking for 3 of the 4 numbers, and I'll fill this 8 in a minute. I just want to finish this thought here. We need 4, 6, 7, and 8. Here we have a 4, so that's a 6, 7, or 8. Here we have an 8, so that's a 4, 6, or 7. Here we have a 6, 7, and 8. Oh, so that's a 4. So we found 3 of the 4 numbers, and we're able to solve that cell because of it. Okay, now once you've filled in that 4, what's left on the rest of it? 6, 7, and 8. You'll see the 3 numbers that are left once you fill in the number you just solved. So now we need to look for a 6, 7, and 8. There's an 8, so that's a 6 or a 7. And here's an 8, so that's a 6 or a 7. And so, and this right here is a 6, 7, or 8. And so a couple of things are happening here. We found 6, 7 twins here. We know these 2 cells have to be a 6 or a 7. So we know that this can't be a 6 or a 7. And there are only 3 numbers left, so we know that's an 8 right there. Okay, let's try that in a block. Let's look at this block right here, or in a box, I'm sorry. Some people call these blocks, I like to call them boxes. Sometimes I kind of interchange those two terms. What's missing in this one? There are 3 cells that are empty. We're missing a 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 5, and 8. So let's look at those two techniques again. First of all, let's look for one of the cells that can see 2 of those numbers. Here we can see a 5 here, so we know that's a 1 or an 8. And if there's another 5 there, okay, here we can see a 1, so we know that's a 5 or an 8. We know this is a 1 or an 8. Okay, and here in this cell can see a 1 and an 8, so we know that's a 5. Okay, and then the second technique I talked about is look for 2 of the 3 cells that can see the same number. In this case, these 2 cells can both see a 1, so we know that's a 1. Okay. So I'll put the 1 in there, and then we know this is a 5 right here because of the 1 and 8 here, using the first technique. And then of course, once we've solved 2 of the 3 cells, the third one's easy. We know that's the only number that's missing in that container. Alright, let's try that again with this box right here. And you know, we can do that with any number of empty cells. So here we're missing 3 again. And what are we missing? 1, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2, 5, and 9. Well, here's a 2 and a 5, so we know that is a 9. Because we're missing three numbers, and there's 2 of the 3 numbers. Now we're only missing 2 of the numbers, 2 and 5, and so if we find any of these 2 cells that can see one of those 2 numbers, we'll know that number. Like right here, there's a 2 here, so we know that's a 5. And here, that's going to be a 2. And we also have a 5 here already, so we know that's a 2. Okay. And of course, that 2 was easy. We only had 1 number left in that box. Alright, now that will work in any column with any number of empty cells. In this column right here, column 9, we have only 3 numbers, so we have 6 missing numbers. It's a little bit trickier to find numbers when you're looking for 6, but let's just try that just to give you an idea of how that works. We've got a 1 here, so we're missing 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. Okay, right here we've got a 2 and a 4 and an 8 and a 9, so we know that's a 3 or a 7. Or we're missing 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. So 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. So you can do that even if there's only 1 number in a container. You can still do that technique, but it gets kind of hard when you have a lot of numbers to remember. So let's look at column 2 here, and I'm going to show you one other thing you can do that has to do with like twins and triplets. This is a little bit more advanced technique, and it works very well on much more difficult puzzles, but you can do it on easy puzzles too. What are we missing here? We've got 5 numbers missing. We're missing 1, 5, 6, 8, 9. 1, 5, 6, 8, 9. Okay. What are we missing here? Well, we've got a 5 and a 6 here, so we're missing 1, 8, and 9 there. Here we're missing 1, 8, 9. So we're just missing a 1 there. So 1, 5, 6, 8, 9. So we know that's a 1. Okay, but now notice we're missing 5 numbers here. We've got 2 of the 5 numbers in this box already. already, so we know these are 1, 8, and 9. Even if we couldn't solve that 1, we'd know these are 1, 8, and 9. And therefore, we're missing 5 and 6 here. So if we use that first technique here, we're missing 5 numbers, and we found 4 of the 5, 5, 6, 8, and 9, that this cell can see, so we knew that was a 1. And now we're only missing 4 numbers, so if we find another cell that's where we can see 3 of those 4 numbers, we can fill that in. But at this point now we've got an 8 and a 9 here, and we've got a 5 and a 6 here. We know these are 8s and 9s because of these 5, 6s and that 1. There's only 8 and 9 that will fit here, so we found a set of twins. And because we found a set of twins, we don't have to worry about 5, 6, 8, and 9 here. We know these two are 8 and 9, so we know these two are 5 and 6. So when you're solving a row or a column or a box, and you find a situation where you find twins or triplets in this case, like in this case, that narrows it down. Now you only have two empty cells that you have to worry about, and you know these are 5 or 6, so you only have to find one number in one of these, and there's a 5 right there, so we know that's a 6, and that's a 5. Okay, and then up here we've got 8 and 9 missing. Again, we could do this before we even filled in this 5 and 6, because we have a 5 and 6 up here. So we know these are 8 and 9, and there's an 8 there, so we know that's a 9 and that's an 8. So that's a technique of solving a container like I just talked about, where you find one less than the number of empty cells, numbers, in order to to solve a cell. Like this 1 right here, we knew these are 1, 5, 6, 8, 9. We had a 1 here and a 5, 6, 8, 9 there, so we knew that was a 1. But if you can find a situation where 2 of the 5 numbers are already here, you know these 3 numbers, and therefore you know that, like in this case, these 5 and 6 are down here for this column. And that makes it easier to solve the rest of that column. So just adding to this simpler technique of solving the column. Okay, so for the rest of this, I'm just going to fill in numbers to finish solving this puzzle, and I'll use some easier techniques to do that. But I wanted to point out those things I mentioned before I got going on this one. Now we've got a empty cell here, and we've got a 3 and a 3 here, so we know that's a 3 right there. What are we missing here? Now we've got 2, 7, 8, 9, and we got a 2 there, so we know that's a 7, and that's a 2. We only had 2 empty cells, or 2 missing numbers, so we found one of the 2, so we could solve those. Let's do that same thing here. This one, we can view this as a box, as a box container, and we're missing 2 numbers in the box, but we can also look at these rows, and in these rows we're only missing 1 number, so these are pretty easy. But let's look at it as a box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're missing 8 and 9. There's a 9, there's an 8, so we know that's 9 and 8. Okay, let's look at this column right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. 2, 3, 4, and 7 are missing. So we need 3 of those 4 numbers, and right here we have a 2, 4, and 7, so that's a 3. Okay, now we need 2 of the 3 numbers. 2, 4, 7. And again, once I filled in this 3, what are we missing in the rest of the column? 2, 4, and 7. So we got 2, 4, and 7. There's a 2, so that's a 4 or a 7. There's a 4, so that's a 2 or a 7. And there's a 7, so that's a 2 or a 4. And actually we've got a 2 here, so this is a 7 here because this cell can see this 2 and this 4. So we know that's a 7. And we got a 2 here and a 2 here, so we know that's a 4. And then 2 goes here. Alright. Let's look at this box right here. 1, 5, 6. 1, 5, and 6 are missing. Here's a 1 and a 6, so we know that's a 5. Now we're missing 1 and 6. There's a 1, so that's a 6, and then the 1. So you can see how I'm doing that first technique I first talked about. In this column we're missing 3 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9. 4, 6, and 9. So we need 2 of those 3 numbers. There's a 4 and a 6. So that's a 9. Now we have a 4 and a 6 left. So now we just need 1 of those numbers, and there's a 6. So that's a 4. And now all we need to do is finish filling in that column. And we can finish filling in this box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we know that's a 7. Let's look at this box right here. We're missing 1 number here, so let's actually look at this column instead of the box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's an 8. Now we have 3 numbers left. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, and 9. Oh, so we got a 1 here, a 2 here, and a 9 here. So we can't solve those yet. And you notice we'd need a 1, 2, or 9, 2 of those 3 numbers on one of these 3 rows in order to solve one of these 3 empty cells here. So we can't solve those right now. So let's look at this column right here. We're missing 4 numbers here. 1, 5, 7, 9. 1, 5, 7, 9. Let's see if we can do anything with that. Here's a 1 and a 7. Here's a 5, 7, and 9, so we know that's a 1. We found 3 of the 4 numbers. What's left? 5, 7, 9. So here's a 7, so that's a 5 or a 9. Here's a 5 and a 7, so we know that's a 9 right there. Okay, now we're missing 5 and 7. There's a 5, so we're only missing 2 numbers now, so we just need to find 1. There's a 5 right there, so that's a 7, and then we can just fill in the 5. Okay, let's fill in this one right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's a 2. Okay, let's look at these 2 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6 and 9. There's a 9. 6, 9. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9. So 3 and 7 are missing there. So we need one of those 2 numbers. There's a 7, so that's a 3. Once we find the 3, we can just fill in the 7. Let's look at this row right here. We had 1, 2, and 9 here that we couldn't solve. But let's look at this row right here and see if we can solve that. We're missing 1, 5, 1, 5, and 9. Okay, there's a 5. There's a 1 and a 9, so we know that's a 5. There's 2 of the 3 numbers. Okay, what's left? 1 and 9. Is there a 1 or a 9 here? Yeah, there's a 9. Oh, so that's a 1. And I didn't notice a minute ago, but there's a 5 and 9, so I could have filled in that 1 there. And we only have 1 left, and we know that's a 9. Now that we've found this number, we should be able to solve the other 2, because we have a 1 and a 2 left, and there's a 1 there, so we know that's a 2. and that's a 1. Okay, now we've only got three empty cells left in this puzzle. This one is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's a 2. And this one is, we could solve this column or this box. The box is easier because the letters or the numbers are all real close. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3 and 4 are missing, and there's a 3 and there's a 4. So that's a 4, and that's a 3. And that's it. Okay, it took a little bit longer to solve this puzzle because I talked quite a bit, but hopefully that helped you to see the thought process that we go through when we're solving Sudoku puzzles. Well, thanks for watching, and go to sudokuprimer.com for more information. That's a website with lots of Sudoku tips and tricks, and also a video list of an index of all videos on this in this channel. I'll see you next time.